Welcome into the newest edition of Caught Stealing, the fantasy baseball podcast here at Fantasy Alarm. And Matt, we are at no shortage of news this week. A lot of big talking points, some on the, let's say, more positive side, and some where I think I might be a little bit more pessimistic than you. But I'm Colby Conway at Colby R. Conway over on X. And with me here, Matt Selz at the Salesman over on X. So, Matt, before we talk about a particular prospect on your preferred ball club, as we'll call it, before we talk about him and why he's a must-add in every single fantasy format, even for the straggling 6-team fantasy baseball leagues out there, if there even is such a thing, he's still a must-add. But before we talk about James Wood, let's talk about Matt Selz and how everything has been for you.
Not too bad. We are recording this the day before the 4th of July. Things here, not so bad. A lot of rain. So, I was supposed to be on vacay this week. That didn't really work out due to a few other things. But my to-do list on getting stuff done outside hasn't been able to get done because we got 5 inches of rain over the last day and a half. So, other than that, watching some baseball. Got to watch the debut of James Wood on Monday. Need to have a word with the official scorer who robbed him of a second hit on his debut. But yeah, that was fun. And nice job for the Nats to debut him on a day where there were only 3 games on, and thus having the most of the baseball watching audience tuning in.
Yep, certainly like that. So let's kind of talk about James Wood here. I'm not going to bury the lead. He needs to be added everywhere.
Yes.
But obviously, you do the prospect rankings. You're the prospect guru here at Fantasy Alarm. What can fantasy managers expect from James Wood? And let's kind of talk about here, like in year one, and then maybe like at the peak of his career. Like, what kind of player are we looking at here for this year and beyond?
So for this year, there's going to be some bumps. He's a rookie. He's coming up. He's still pretty young. But he is very toolsy. He is 6'7". Okay, so he's basically the same height as Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, but he's faster than both of them. He runs better than both of them, and doesn't get injured when he does so, which is good, right? He's got a really good hit tool. I'm not quite sure if it's plus. When all is said and done, it flashed plus in the minors, but I think his skills just were better than everybody he was facing. So, in general, I would say above average hit tool. So probably about a 280 average is probably what we're putting him at. Plus power, above average speed. He can play, pretty well anywhere in the outfield. I think they're going to keep him at left field for the time being. And yeah, so he needs to be added. So for the rest of this year, I always have a tough time figuring out what's going to happen over the next half a season, basically, because he gets called up. He's theoretically playing in the Futures game, which is interesting. It was announced after he was called up to the majors. But he's got a week and a half or so, basically, to get his feet wet. And then there's the All-Star break, and then, we really kick things off in July. So I would say I think there's an off chance he gets to between 10 and 12 homers and probably 10 or 12 steals the rest of the way. I would say. But in the peak of his powers, I think we're talking 30-25 guy, 30-30 guy with a pretty helpful, if you're in OBP leagues, his OBP in double and triple A this year was off the chart. His WRC plus at Rochester was 173, which I think is the highest WRC plus for a prospect they've ever had, which says something. Just earlier today on Wednesday or late Tuesday, when Baseball America released their newest prospect rankings, he was their number 1 overall prospect. He's certainly in my top 5. He's a special guy. He should be added. The upside is huge. And if you're in keeper leagues, there's no reason why he shouldn't have been added before this, to be honest.
100%. Very elite, toolsy guy. And just looking at his numbers here, 52 games at AAA prior to the call, double-digit homers, double-digit steals, did ride a 410 BABIP to a 353 average. But the main thing looking at it, is it because of the BABIP? Is it because he just made a ton of contact? But the strikeout rate dropped
Yes.
significantly. More contact for him, and nobody will get upset with more contact from somebody. So definitely like that with him. And then we also got news that oft injured right-hander, we'll call him that, Shane Baz, former great of a team that is near and dear to the hearts of this podcast in particular. But he's going to come up.
Mainly for you being a Pirates fan and me having him in Dynasty. So
Yep, near and dear to the hearts of the podcast. So he's coming up. He's going to get the start on Friday. What we know, when healthy, very good, very intriguing.
correct.
However, health has been quite an elusive.
He's been below average in the health grade, if we're
That
going to put it.
the best ability is availability, and he is oftentimes not available.
Yeah.
So James Wood is a stop what you're doing, pull the car over to the side of the road, pick him up, continue on with your drive. That's what we're looking at with James Wood. You stop what you're doing, you get him. What do we make of Shane Baz? How do we treat him in fantasy here moving forward?
I mean, at this point in the season, he's worth a flyer, right? Because if he's available, we were
Right.
talking beforehand before we started recording. He's rostered in 83% of Fantrax leagues right now, which he should be because when he's healthy, he is a frontline starter, and people pretty well figured that he was going to be up about this time this year. So when he's healthy, he's a frontline caliber starter. If he's available, I would take a shot because if he stays healthy the rest of the season, he's probably the best pitcher still coming back from injury, right? Because I don't know what to make of DeGrom at this point. I don't know, if we're seeing Scherzer or JV stay healthy the rest of the way.
Robbie
We're talking
Ray.
about another what?
Robbie Ray.
Maybe we'll see. He's got to adjust to a new ballpark and a new
Senga.
team. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I think Shane Baz, when healthy, is better than Kodai Senga. And assuming that Clayton Kershaw comes back and is anywhere close to his previous self, the only thing that his issue is his innings. His ratios just won't help you very much with the. So I would say I would take a flyer on him. There's got to be some bench arm that you're only spot starting that you could probably drop and pick up Shane Baz if he's available. But he'll start Friday for Tampa because they now have a hole in their rotation thanks to a bizarre trade earlier today.
Yep, sending Aaron Savale over to the Brewers. So when we look at Baz and his numbers here, first 5 starts as he came back, 7.71 ERA, but over his last 5, 35 strikeouts across 23 innings with a 1.57 ERA. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to. He's already up to, it's weird to say already up to, he's at 39 and a third inning so far this year.
Yep.
Oft injured. 2022, 13 innings. 2023 didn't pitch. He's already at 39 this year. His career high is back in 2019, where he had 81 and a third innings. Didn't pitch in 2020, 78 and 2/3 in 2021. I mean, how much mileage do they want to put on that arm?
I think he gets up to about 75 or 80 innings.
So if we're going at that, he's already basically he's halfway.
Yeah, but if you think about it, he gets a start on Friday is what, the 5th of July?
Yeah, for sure.
He'll get another start before the All-Star break. So there's 2 there. Then he'll have a couple of, not a couple of weeks, but like basically a week off, right? And then you figure you can kind of space some because here's the advantage that Tampa has. They also have Drew Rasmussen, who's supposed to be coming back, right? There's Springs could be back, right? So you've got some pieces that are coming back. You could go 6-man rotations. They're not afraid to do that. And therefore, if he goes 5 innings a start or 6 innings a start, but he's only pitching once a week, you've got what, 13 weeks of the less than 13 weeks of the season left at this point. Because September and August are what, basically 9 weeks basically, and then you've got a couple of weeks in July, so you've got like 12 weeks left. If he makes a start a week and he goes 5 innings, that's another 60 innings. Probably about what you're getting.
Or they could always run out an opener and just limit him to 4.
I mean, that's true, because once you open, if they want to help him get wins,
Yeah.
then any guy pitching after the opener is eligible for a win.
Sure.
So,
And there's other guys too. And you look at that rotation. I mean, between Taj Bradley's like a handful of
right.
innings in the minors last year, he's 40 innings off his high from last year, like in the majors. It's 104 innings last year. He did work up to 133 in the minors back in 2022. So he's a little bit more equipped. But if the Rays fall out of things a little bit, they have a little second half slide per se. They should probably try to preserve some of these young arms. And that's when they go to the 6-man rotation, do the openers, limit the
Right.
innings, especially with Boz's injury history. They cannot push him. They can't.
Correct. No, we're not getting 130 innings out of, like, he's not going to go
Sure.
pitch another 100 innings, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at probably 60 innings max from
Yep.
him. But again,
Yep.
if it's 5 innings to start for 12 starts,
Mhm.
that's enough to get you more than your SP8, who's a flyer on your bench, right?
Yep. Or your SPA, who's a flyer on your bench, who is more of a name for our weekend streamers that we go in, because as we're at this point of the season, it gets a little bit dicey. So away from the prospects, 2 injured players of note, or I should say currently injured, trying to work their way back. Josh Jung and Kodai Senga.
Yep.
Which one scares you more? Because here's the thing. Josh Jung got activated. I believe, or maybe he wasn't activated from the IL, but he was back with the team.
Yes.
He stopped swinging again.
Yeah.
He's not even swinging anymore because of soreness in that wrist.
Since June 20th, I think I saw.
Yep. So, and like they've even said, we don't know a timeline of his wrist. So cool. That's good to know with him. And then Kodai Senga is coming back from a issue, which I believe was his posterior capsule in his shoulder. He's working his way back from that, arm issues, pitchers. He's going to need a little bit of a ramp up because he didn't throw it all in spring, if I remember correctly. So can you trust either of these guys returning? Because right now, when it comes to Josh Jung, the fact that they're telling me we don't know, I'm leaving him in an IL spot if I have him. But as pretty much my teams get more and more injured by the day, it seems it's becoming harder to hold on to him at this point.
So I'm not sure I trust either of them, but it's for different reasons.
Okay.
Right. So Josh Jung, there's a video of him going around on Twitter being asked about it. I don't remember what the account is. But if you do a search for Josh Jung, I'm pretty sure it's the top one that comes up. And he jokingly says, "We've set 18 timelines and I've missed all of them, so I don't know what to expect at this point." Because we test it one day and then we got to wait a day or two to see how it responds.
Oh my gosh, the optimism is off the charts.
Yeah. So at least he's, kind of tongue-in-cheeking about it.
Hey, he's honest. I'll give him that. I appreciate that.
But I trust their medical staff more from Texas than I do from the Mets.
True.
I also think that Texas doesn't have as much of a reason to push Josh Jung as the Mets do for Senga, because Texas is pretty well secure in a postseason spot if they just keep playing and Corey Seager's dodging bullets left and right. Right? Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily need Josh Jung's bat right away, so they can afford to kind of roll him out and see how he's progressing. The Mets are a game and a half out of the wild card, and there's already talk about, are they going to be buyers this deadline because they're close to the wild card, and the last 3 NL third wild card teams have made the World Series, and people want to crap on the Diamondbacks, but they shouldn't have been the third wild card team last year. They were the best team in the NL for 2/3 of the season. So if that's the case, the Mets are going to push Senga to get back and fill holes in their rotation at this point. And the guy hasn't pitched like all season. He tried to do some flat ground throwing like 2 months ago and was like, nope, something else is wrong. That was not related to why you shut me down in the first place. I don't know. And the Mets can never seemingly fix anybody. They just can't. They had a guy get injured in a shower the other night. Harrison Bader cut his head, or Brandon Nimmo, one of them cut their head in a shower the other night. I don't trust the Mets medical staff at this point. So, who offers more value if they're healthy? Probably Senga at this point.
Right. Big if, though. Big if healthy. And now, obviously, we're recording this on July 3rd, around 2:15
Yeah,
p.m. Eastern.
Senga's supposed to start a rehab assignment
Yep.
next week.
Today.
Today.
I thought it was
Oh,
today.
right. The tweet I saw was from June 30th, which is last week.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So he's heading out today, but this isn't a quick 1 or 2 appearance up with the team. This is spring training. So
yeah, this is probably 2 starts at each level.
I mean, let's think if he goes, let's say, I mean, they should slow play him.
If
So
he
let's
goes
say
an
they
inning
go
in the first one, an inning and change.
an inning, and then you go what, maybe 2 innings or 35 pitches. Then maybe you work up to 45, 50, maybe 50, 60. So there's 3 or 4 starts, 60 to 75 ish. There's 5 starts. So let's say 2 at each. That comes to about 6 starts. You put 5 days in between if he stays on schedule, which one could argue maybe they go 6 days or something. They're 30 days. That's a calendar month. So right now we're looking at early August.
But you
if
also
they
have to
slow
figure
play them.
there are minor league all-star games in between there.
Right.
Too.
And that's true. Good point. It could push out more. Now, I think the worst thing would be if you're a fantasy manager that has Kodai Senga, I would want the Mets to slow play him. If they rush him back, I would be more worried. Yes, you may get to put Senga in your lineup sooner.
Yes.
But I want the full bill of health. Take your time. What good is Senga to me if you rush him up, he comes up 2 weeks early, he makes 1 start, and then he has a little bit of shoulder soreness and sits down.
Right,
and last year, his first
Verlander,
month was the worst.
right?
So if he's going to be a slow starter too, again, there was also a transition to the States. So there's a lot of moving parts there.
But the second half last year was, I mean, he was a dark horse. He worked his way into 5th in the NL Cy Young.
Yeah.
With that second half. So,
but his 2, it was April and June ERA wise were his 2 worst months with a half decent May mixed in there. Right. So if it's going to be a slow start, if they rush him back because they feel like they need to add him in, I would be more concerned. I want them to slow play him personally.
I would agree if they can. There's also talk they could go out and sign a certain free agent pitcher that I'm not going to talk about right now. But if they choose to do that, then that buys them a little bit more time in working Senga and still having their playoff hopes alive. But yeah, I think this is, if we see Senga before mid-August, I'd be surprised.
Yep, and I would be worried if we did, to be honest. So that is that. So Matt, let's move to a little patience or panic. Got 2 right-handers we're going to talk about here today. New York right-hander. Last week we talked about Garrett Cole. So today we talk about Luis Gil. Hot start. No other way of wording it. And he's cooled off of late. Has the regression monster caught up to him? And that's all it is. And maybe it's one of those situations where he's not as good as he was, but he's not as bad as he is. Correct. Type situation. Or is this the writing was on the wall, the collapse was coming, and this is more indicative of the pitcher that he is?
I don't think this is indicative of the pitcher he is. I think what it is that people have a book on him now. And he hasn't fully adjusted to, switching things up, adjusting his tendencies, using the same pitches but in a different way, right? Because as you know, being a former catcher, it could be like if a guy has 3 pitches, if you keep mixing them up, you can still keep hitters on their toes, because maybe in a 2-1 count, instead of throwing a fastball, you throw the changeup and everybody gets out in front of it. And right now he's just continuing to throw fastballs or the same pitches that everybody knows is coming, right?
Yep.
There's some talk that somebody put out a tweet that he could win the Cy Young, the AL Rookie of the Year, and a World Series in the same year, and it'd be the greatest rookie pitching season ever. And then since then, he's been 0-3 with like 100 ERA. I just think people are figuring it out. So he's not as bad as he is now. He's not as ridiculously unhittable off the chart as he was for the first 2 months of the season, right? There is some rookie hitting the wall stuff going on. There is some pitch mixing changes that are going on. Um, is it because he got shifted in the rotation with Garrett Cole coming back? I doubt it, because at this point in the season, it's not always a 3-versus-3. It could be a 3-versus-1 or a 3-versus-5, or it's not like the opening week where it's ace versus ace and then 2-versus-2, and then, because everybody's all shuffled at this point. So I just think it's more, it was bound to happen at some point. He now has to make the adjustment that people have made to him, and then he'll get, I'm not going to say as hot as he was, but he'll start getting closer to that.
I think too, looking at his pitch mix, he's a 3-pitch guy, which
Right.
you can get by with 3. When you dive into it more, he's a 2-pitch guy to lefties. Fastball changeup. He hardly uses that slider at all.
And
That
the
back
AL
foot
East is
slider is
loaded with,
effective. The
yes.
back foot slider is so good from righties to lefties. So I don't know if he just doesn't trust it enough, but when you look at his numbers here in 2024, like I'm going through just specifically against lefties, 6 games in May, 210 slug. June, up to 419. Small sample size here in July, 875. That book, his 3-pitch repertoire is smaller than most to begin with, but you can get by with 3. He's down to a 2-pitch guy against lefty. He's especially against lefties. If they're going to hit him and hit him hard, 458 WOBA here in that start, and in June it was up to 359. They got to do a little different wrinkle against lefties because he can hold his own against righties.
Opponents are loading up lefties against, the righty pitcher.
Yep.
Especially, the Orioles are loaded with lefty.
Yeah, and if you're going to be fastball changeup, unless his fastball has a little bit of a natural cut to it, which I haven't looked into it, you have nothing coming in on a lefty. So they can get out over that plate because they're not worried about anything coming in at them. I mean, you can throw the fastball in, but if it's not going to have any cut, it's basically just straight or maybe a little two-seam action. And then you have the changeup that's either going to be down or a little arm side run as well. So I would start just mixing sliders in. Just show them that you have it and throw it in there. That'd be a wrinkle I would like to see with him.
We've watched righties spin lefties into the dirt with back foot sliders. Go to Pitching Ninja's Twitter feed, and they're all over the place. Right? It's a dangerous pitch that should be thrown more to lefties. So I'm with you. If he starts putting that in, then I think we'll see him start to improve.
I'm exhibiting some patience, but like I said, kind of in the intro when I mentioned talking about him, I don't think he's not as good as he was, and he's not as bad as he has been these last 3 starts. So
correct. Luis Gil was never a frontline starting pitcher as a prospect. He was a mid-rotation guy or a very high strikeout number 4 arm with that. His size doesn't suggest that he's an ace. He's a fairly diminutive framed guy. The stuff, if you want to be an ace, you need at least 4 pitches. And the way he uses the pitch mix was never going to be a frontline guy. So he's at best a number 3, if not a high strikeout number 4. And the way he was pitching earlier this year was better than we've ever seen Garrett Cole pitch. So that wasn't going to hold.
Yep. Fair enough there. Let's go to LA. A little trouble in LA. Some of the arms, either they're injured or there's some questions about them. And Bobby Miller opened the year like a bat out of hell, to say it just kind of quite frank. But numbers overall in the year, he's getting hit pretty hard. Walk rate is through the roof. Strikeouts have held compared to last year. Expected ERA is still relatively high. As I'm looking at his numbers here, I guess he's still throwing hard, so that's cool. And he has that for him, but the numbers otherwise have not been there for Bobby Miller. So are you panicking at all with Bobby Miller here? His last start was pedestrian, and he really hasn't had a good, I'll just say it, he really hasn't had a good start since his first one of the year.
I'm starting to panic.
Yep.
A little bit here.
That's his only quality start in the year. I know he's only made like 7 starts, but 6 starts.
Yeah, and with the offense, granted, it's a little bit banged up right now for the Dodgers, but with the offense behind him, not having as many, like he's got 1 win in 6 starts right now. So that tells you he's not putting his team in a position to win. He's walking a lot of guys. The BABIP against him is off the charts right now. It's just not. I mean, it is a little interesting because his ground ball rate is pretty high. Granted, small sample size, but having that high of a ground ball rate and still not being able to get guys out is a little disconcerting to me as well. I'm not fully giving up on him because the stuff is there. Like Bobby
Yes.
Miller came up being a frontline caliber pitching option for the Dodgers. Was he going to jump in and be that first crack at it in the pros? No. Um, but we saw him come pretty close last year. So unless he's still shaking off some cobwebs from the injury, maybe. But you would hope that through 6 starts and 25 innings that it would start to be being figured out, and it's not. He's arguably getting worse.
If you remove that dominant season opener for him, he has a 6.6 K per nine, which is the exact same as his walk rate. And if you just look since he returned from injury in those 3 starts, he has more walks than strikeouts, and he has a 4.73 K per nine. And mind you, he's faced Arizona, at the White Sox, and at Coors.
Yeah, and the Cubs, who haven't been great for much of the year.
Yep. So I am definitely panicking a little bit about Bobby Miller there. And Matt, let's put a bow on this episode. Let's head into the July 4th festivities, hot dogs, anything else, beer, burgers, whatever you want to do there. We'll jump into that. But to wrap it up, let's do a little waiver wire pickup and weekend streamer. I'll kick the ball over to you.
Yeah, so our waiver wire, we all need some help with pitching, right? At this point, are we finding quality starting pitching on the waiver wire? Probably not. I mean, if Shane Baz is there, go pick him up. Kodai Senga, if you can hold him for a month and he's available, sure, he's worth it. But if you need a guy right now who can help you in some ratios and get you a little bit of everything, Alex Vesia, reliever for the Dodgers, is been getting a little bit of everything. He's gotten some saves, he's gotten some holds, and he's gotten some wins. So if you're only in a saves only league, he's still really only picking him up when Evan Phillips can't go. But if you're in a Solds league, he's got a pretty decent combo of saves and holds. He's getting a little bit of wins. Dodgers have been playing a lot of close games of late. He's got a bunch of strikeouts. In 37 innings, he's posted 48 strikeouts with a sub 1.5 ERA and a sub 1 whip. So pretty hard to say no to those ratios. 37 innings for a reliever at this point is pretty good. He's not going to get as many innings as a starter, obviously, but 37 for a reliever is still going to help you out at this point. So that's my waiver wire guy right now.
If he needs some help offensively, I'm going to Nolan Sean-Uel. He's got 5 multi-hit efforts here in his 7-game hit streak that he currently has active. 44% hard hit rate. He's hitting 400. His main calling card is really his plate presence or his presence in the box with plate discipline. OBP is not as high this year as we ideally want it to be, but ultimately he's locked into playing time. He's not leaving that Los Angeles lineup. So he's going to get you at bats.
Literally no other options.
Well, hey, that's why he's locked into playing time. He is there. So he is a guy that you can look at if you need some offensive help. And Matt, I'll roll in with my weekend streamer. I'm going with Yariel Rodriguez. He gets the Mariners on Saturday. That offense is hit or miss. I'm going to hope it's a miss that day. Rodriguez is coming off a solid start against Houston prior to his injury. ERA a little bit above 4, an okay strikeout rate that we can do it. The whip wasn't good through his first 4 starts of the season, had a little bit of back issue that put him down. But since he's returned, he's basically just riding his 4-seamer, which has been probably his most reliable pitch. Had some bad luck with it. So if some of those expected numbers or if his actual numbers can come closer to his expected numbers with his fastball, I think he'll turn out well. And honestly, Seattle's one of those offenses where if you catch him on a bad day, you can put up a pretty darn good line. So we're going to hope for that on Saturday with Rodriguez. And it looks like you have a starter on Saturday as well.
I do. I have Andrew Heaney pitching for the Rangers against Tampa. Tampa's been okay offensively versus righties over the last month. They're striking out nearly a quarter of the time versus them. Rest of the numbers are about middle of the pack. Last time out, Andrew Heaney went 7 strong against Baltimore, scattering 5 hits. They struck out 10. Tampa is not the offense that Baltimore is by far. It's not even close. So we're going to hope he doubles down on that showing. He's been pretty good at striking guys out. The ERA is a little higher than we would like to see, but he's been pretty good at scattering hits of late, keeping the ball in the park. And Tampa's just kind of feeling things out game by game right now. So we're going to go with Andrew Heaney, who's rostered in just over 50% of Fantrax leagues. So that's my streamer for the weekend.
I'm right there with you. Saturdays are for streamers. That's what we'll say with Andrew Heaney and Yariel Rodriguez, Alex Vesia, Nolan Sean UL can help you out if you need a waiver wire pickup. We got some prospects coming up. Head over to Fantasy Alarm. Check out Matt's prospect report and prospect rankings. I have the injury report over at Fantasy Alarm, and then we have a bunch of other great content. So make sure you go check it out. If you aren't already subscribed, become an All-Pro subscriber today, and you can run your lineup and trade questions by myself, by Matt Selz, and all of the other great folks that we have here in the family at Fantasy Alarm. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast. And last action item, give Matt Selz a follow over on X at the Selzman. I'm over on X at Colby R. Conway. Have a fun and safe July 4th and July 4th weekend, and we will see you next week with the newest edition of Caught Stealing.